Alright, so this is Strathmore charcoal paper. It's cotton. It's like 64 pounds or something. It's about the cheapest cotton drawing paper you can get. It's a really good deal. I don't know of anything comparable. It takes ink. Alright, it's meant for charcoal, so it's not perfect for the stuff I use it for, but I use it for quick watercolor stuff because it's cotton. It's more absorbent, so you kind of have to try harder to get lines and stuff with water mediums. I like it quite a lot. I did this with two 5H graphite pencils. The first one was a Kimberly. These blurrier lines, or these sort of thicker ones, were the Kimberly, even though it was pretty sharp. And then the other one was a Faber-Castell. And the Faber-Castell is much lighter and leaves a lot less residue and is therefore, I think, better for a 5H pencil. I have a lot of those Kimberlys, so I'm probably going to use them up, but Faber-Castells seem to be better if you want a lighter mark with less residue. I'm probably going to do a lot of erasing this. That's what's good about this paper, is it takes a lot of punishment. I should start left to right because this is the default ink that comes with the Kurosakis. It is not waterproof, it's water-based, and it takes a little while to dry. I'm almost certainly going to smear something before this is over. So, this is going to look pretty terrible because I'm not super great at working. There's some stuff that looks alright, there's some stuff that is obviously wrong if you look at the original image. But yeah, so some lines are going to be a little wonky, but that's fine. And what I wanted to talk about first, and I think it might be a pretty long discussion, is people acting like clowns on the internet. But I do want to point out all the clowns portrayed. We've got bozo elements here. These guys back here are sort of generic party clowns. We've got a mascot. We've got Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse. We've got Peter Criss from Kiss. And so these are all people that donned their suit explicitly to make money. And so, I don't think you should stigmatize everyday working clowns, but people who are clowns for stock photos or clowns for a profession, that's okay. They want to be represented that way. So, also there's Odorous Ungarus from Gwar. Here we go. So, the thing I wanted to talk about is I recently watched a video about it was an Atheist Experience episode, and at the beginning of the episode, I was actually showed two parts of it by a friend. The eyes are going to be the worst part. At the beginning of the episode, the host, Matt Dillahunty, kinda raged out over some stuff on Facebook. Someone contacted him and said that they were concerned about where is his pupil? It's so hard to tell. In the original, he's wearing glasses. This is harder than watercolor painting. Somebody called the show, said they were concerned about his weight. Matt's a little overweight. I think he said on the show before he's diabetic. Yeah. So, and so I guess and so Matt sort of freaks out. He says, none of your fucking business. And he seems to apply it later on when someone calls with someone calls and is speaking from they're a ethical vegan, and they're a much worse argumentator, rhetorician than Matt Dillahunty. Like that's what he's good at. This is the thing he does, and so he just sort of ran circles around them and kind of actually proved their point in some ways at various points. Goop goop. That'll be all right for now. Probably come back to that. And he then brought it back. He constructed all these straw men, and then like all these additional claims that the caller wasn't actually making and attributing them to the caller, and then he brought it back to health concerns and about how it's not people's business. So I didn't actually have a reference for this clown nose. So where do I think the light's coming from? Well, it looks like it's daytime outside, so maybe we've got some unter strokes down here, and yeah, that's pretty nice. For now, I mean, again, I'm not super great at this quite yet, and I did the original in, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. By which I mean the pencils. So I like Matt Dillahunty. I don't agree with him on everything. That's the kind of thing he would say about someone he likes, and I'll say that now. I do like Matt Dillahunty. I've been aware of him for a while. My hand's getting kind of shaky. And I don't know if he's... So I sort of did actually think and sort of acted on the thought that I did lose a little bit of credibility when I was overweight. Like sort of with myself. Like it's just like an apparent thing that's different from other people. And like, why am I like this but other people aren't? And so I didn't really accept that it was an intractable genetic thing. And so my choice was to not be, like, stay there or change. And so I said in another video, the lecture Sugar, the Bitter Truth was really helpful. It basically started with cutting out sugar. I eventually moved to a vegetarian diet, but that happened after I had already lost pretty much all the weight. Sort of just happened as a consequence of thinking more about food. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, does it compromise? So if your doctor's overweight, maybe, does that disqualify them a little bit? Because here's my perspective on this. And we'll get back to Matt Dillahunty. And I'm not going to put Matt Dillahunty in the title of this video because I don't really want to attract his ire. And I like him a lot. And so, yeah, I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to attract attention to myself by picking a fight with Matt Dillahunty, because I don't want to pick a fight with Matt Dillahunty. I like Matt Dillahunty, and I'm concerned about Matt Dillahunty. It would be cool if he stuck around longer. It would be cool if he lost a bunch of weight, and he talked about that on that perspective, but it isn't necessary for me continuing liking Matt Dillahunty, and I don't think that the person from, I think, Japan that contacted him meant offense. And that's sort of the thing with intent, as I feel like intent matters. You often just so you can assume the best intent of people, and for people that, because a lot of times it seems like intent is derived after the fact, or they decide what their intent was thinking about it afterwards, and human memory is pretty fallible. So sort of lost my train of thought there because of the extensive inking process. I was going to talk about my experience with the medical system and trying to lose weight. I went to the doctor. I suffered from stuff like basic metabolic syndrome stuff, heartburn mostly. I took various heartburn medications, ranitidine, omeprazole. I went off the omeprazole because it's just like it shuts off 80% of the pumps in your guts. Seems not worth it. And so I really wanted to lose weight, and so I went to a nutritionist, and nutritionist gave me some really bad advice that didn't really apply. Said nothing about sugar. Had a nutrition degree, which is sort of a whole can of worms. That line's a little sloppy. Yeah, I wish I could draw cartoons, but I'm not actually very good at drawing from memory, as maybe you've guessed. There's various opinions on that. People say that it doesn't really matter, like the great artists, I'll use reference photos or whatever, and that is kind of true, but being able to draw a figure from memory is just, try really hard for a long time, and then if you can't do it, decide it's not an achievable goal, because it's just such a useful skill. So, I hope to get there. I like cartoons. So the nutritionist didn't offer great advice, and I sort of have this basic thought about being in the medical profession in this day and age and not figuring out the obesity. It's got to be the most common ailment that your patients have in common, or the lowest common denominator. The sugar thing is real, and it's just so it was well known until it was. You learn in biochemistry the exact reactions that Dr. Lustig talks about in that lecture. The sugar, the bitter truth. I'm just going to say it every time. Get that line there. Probably come back later. And yeah, so I go back to my doctor after having lost a bunch of weight. I was about halfway through. They'd seen me a few months ago, and I'd lost goopity-goo. They'd seen me 3 months ago, and I had lost 80 pounds. And she wanted to know how I did it. And I said, well, it came to my attention that sugar is a horrible poison, and I stopped eating sugar, and I've been losing 3 pounds a week or more and feeling really great about it. And I have been doing exercise, but it's not, you can never do just exercise, and that's sort of my whole point. And then, yeah, I came back when I lost the rest of the weight a few months later, and she looked really different. And she said, oh, that's my name. You're right. I lost a bunch of weight. And I did it by cutting out sugar, and I don't eat bread, and, gloopity glue. And that's awesome. But until you get to finish developing as a person, is when your brain stops developing. I feel that's like 25. So I'm basically a child. And so a child figured out the lowest common denominator, affecting your patients. And I really take a systemic approach to most things. I don't feel like it's her fault at all. I think she's a typical doctor. She's probably very concerned, but she is double booked into infinity, and there's nothing she can do about it. And it's like she probably doesn't have time to critically think about like her patients' problems like on her own time, like a doctor with far fewer patients would be able to. And so, like, yeah, it's not her fault. But it is really troubling because I don't think she's, I don't think she's dumb. I think she was probably educated at a good school, and I think that this is I think that it's obvious that doctors are failing their patients, and it's really that the system is failing their patients, and there you go. That's sort of one of my things on credibility, and how, I guess, paying attention to your own health factors into your credibility when someone's talking to you. For Matt Dillahunty in particular, or for someone that is trying to be reasonable in a public square, I do see, I saw and continue to see a lot to the claim that it does like factor into how reasonable you appear to be, because if you are in great shape, or you're at least in decent shape, you have figured that stuff out, right? It's a visible indicator that either you have good genetics and you eat trash. That's possible, but as you get older and older, that's much more difficult. And when people know what they're looking for, it's probably impossible without makeup. And yeah, so it does factor in, I think, to your personal credibility with certain people. I know that there's lots of like that combo of health conscious but also crazy new age people. Like I know that's not, that's the thing. And so it matters to some types of unreasonable people. I think a lot of people would know that it's not the end all be all, and everybody has failings to their reason. But that's the thing, is I do think there is ample evidence. And yeah, I don't know your personal medical history, but I had to completely stop eating all sugars. So, and then it worked great. And I was young, and you might not be able to now that you're older or whatever, but younger people can. And dismissing it in this way and getting indignant about it doesn't help. Like stuff like the fat positive or fat acceptance movement doesn't help. It is sort of counterlogical. You should be able to take critical inquiry about yourself. I wouldn't have started putting up these videos if I wasn't comfortable with people's interpretations of my opinions. I mean, you would have to be in my circumstances, I am going to come off sounding coherent at first, and probably to some point always, because of what I'm doing. But I can reiterate the stuff that sounds vague, and it's, I don't know, I think I'll get better at it. I think it's like singing and playing guitar. And also I'm not going to do like the drawing, the really intense stuff where you're staring at the image and you're just you're in that flow state. I couldn't do that and talk at the same time. But inking, I think we can do it. Yeah, so we got his clown flower. Suppose I didn't actually have a clown flower. Yeah. So I really like Matt Dillahunty. I want to go to Austin sometime. I would like to meet Matt Dillahunty sometime. He seems like a really great guy, and it's awesome that they have a community of skeptics down there that are, yeah, that's really where I drew his finger a little weird. It's awesome that they have a community of skeptics down there, like in the middle of Texas. I understand Austin's different, but yeah. And so I did think, and I think it's also sort of a generational thing. There's sort of a that's none of your business attitude, and as much as I hate to admit it, privacy is pretty generational. It's changed. What people consider private has sort of changed. People are really appearance conscious. Yeah, I mean, the society teaches you to be. Like, advertising definitely contributes to that. There's all sorts of reasons for it. I think it's a thing young people are better at dealing with, for the most part. Like, people, they put pictures of themselves up on the internet all the time, and so it's like, I don't think they're as concerned with a lot of aspects of privacy as older generations are, or actually as I am. Yeah. So, I think you just got to be willing to accept I mean, it wasn't even criticism, but it's like, I guess you could call it criticism, the initial letter that set him off, but it's like, it's very basic. And the other thing is, I grew up fat and it wasn't as huge. I was kind of a trendsetter, I guess. I was, I think, by far the heaviest kid in the school. I can't really, in elementary school, like I was, and I'm also tall, but not that tall. Yeah, like when I lost weight, I got down to the pant size I had when I was like 12. So yeah, I was a big kid. And so I was really conscious of it. No one else was big kid, and other people, I think, cared about it less than I did. I was hypersensitive to it, and I think part of the reason that I figured it out so early and was so motivated to it is because I was so hypersensitive to it. Nobody else really cared as much. That's sort of universal, I learned, is, ooh, messed up that arrow, that's okay. Is nobody else really cared that much. But, yeah. This is a nice... This collar is going to be tricky. Oh, there goes the dog. And I don't know if what I'm saying is correct for people in my generation. I don't know if it's necessarily like a thicker skin about this stuff. But I just think it's... I don't know, if you're a young man and you've applied for certain lines of work, like you are like manual labor, it's like you're kind of meat. If you're a woman applying to be a waitress, it probably matters a lot in a lot of places, and it probably shouldn't, but that's what you learn to anticipate. And so I guess it's the ideal versus the real. I don't think that it's a battle the ideal is going to win, because I just think that people have now grown up being sensitized to their view of themselves in the world, and at least careful people, and how they are presenting themselves and its permanency. I'm sure there's a bunch of people that don't realize how permanent their web presences will be, or what the information they're sending out now will mean, or whatever. But I mean, eventually we're going to build robots that will probably be able to tell all sorts of things about people just based on. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you build a deep learning machine that can diagnose certain like organ diseases just based on pictures of their face over time. I mean, pattern recognition is something we are starting to automate in a really huge way, and all sorts of stuff we're going to be able to tell from how people look. And it's going to be horrible. And that's the thing, is I don't want to live in a world with no privacy, but if you can, with more and more and more information and more information gathering, I mean, this is where you're headed. So so what do you, I mean, what do you do about it? And I don't know if that sounds defeatist of me, but there's really nothing you can do about it. You can engage with the world, or you cannot, because as soon as you're connected, as soon as you say anything, there's the potential that people can find out as much about, I mean, a decent amount about you. And also, a lot of people use social media, so they put themselves on the internet, and that's just a natural consequence of that. And so I mean, it's huge amongst young people. I just don't think they care. I don't think that they have that idea of privacy or of a separation, I suppose, of like a personal and a social sphere. The personal sphere is the social sphere. Everybody tells everybody about everything. So yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, and the other color was from Japan as well. In other cultures, you can call someone fat and it's not offensive. That's just not the case in America. And in a lot of ways, America is much more atypical about this, because they have been fat the longest, although everywhere else is pretty much catching up. Rip Dealio. So, yeah. Hatchet-tastic. I don't really have my references for this face paint in front of me, so I'm just going for it without double checking on my references. Wish me luck. Well, I think that's, I guess, all I have to say about that. I don't really like to offer infinite disclaimers, because I mean, like I said, I think a lot of intent is derived after the fact. But I like, at this point, I don't think you should have to offer infinite disclaimers for talking about a person who's making things public on the internet, who has a television show or whatever. Wow, this face paint is not looking great. They're a public person. Sort of a lot of ways you can tell how public a person wants to be is how much of themselves they put out there. So it's like, are they putting out video recordings of their own face, or are they trying to keep out of the camera? I mean, I'm not trying to hide my personality or whatever. I'm just not explicitly saying it. But I think you would have to try pretty hard to hide it. I'm just not gonna. I think it's better not to try that hard. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna take a break. Alright. Well, I think I should probably stop being a coward and just try to fill out the face over here. Yeah, that's about it about your personal appearance being tied to your credibility. I think it's a really lousy, like, ideally everyone's evaluating everybody's arguments, but at some level your body is your brain, and as you get older, metabolic syndrome isn't good for continued brain health. So, I mean, if you develop, this is going to be very hard. If you develop heart disease, like that often leads to dementia. Um, di- Diabetes. There are researchers now who are wondering if they're going to start calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because they think it has something to do with the same hormones that diabetes, insulin and leptin. Rippin. I would look that up. Say, this guy sounds like an idiot. Look up links between metabolic syndrome and dementia. Or how about drugs for metabolic syndrome, like omeprazole? Yeah. All right. Wow. Okay, so Violent J is looking horrifying, which is just as he would like it. So I was going to talk about ICP a bit. I don't remember. I think it goes around his mouth. I don't remember. I don't have my reference. And clowning in general. And clowns. So I'm not a fan of the alleged music of Insane Clown Posse. But I have been doing my research for a long time. There's a fairly decent Juggalo community where I live. So I've met him in the wild. I've seen him in the paint. And how could you not want to know more about that? All the Juggalos I've met have been very nice. And yeah, so that's what I thought. Like, who better for a bunch of clowns and then showing a bunch of professional clowns in their stead than one of the members of ICP. And the cool thing, I guess, about ICP is, like, I think one of them dropped out in 8th grade or something. Like, they're both. I don't think either finished high school. Like, they were really driven and motivated, and they figured out that gangster rap was going to get them in jail, and that they were kind of clowns, and that they should just live up to it and dress like clowns. And they didn't want to go to jail. And so that's the genesis of a lot of hip-hop groups, and they're not the best, but I have found they did a song a few years back called Where's God, which I actually thought was pretty interesting. It's like they tackle the question of evil, and they never quite get there. Yeah. The refrain goes, where's God when the shit goes down? And they're just like rapping about like heroin and crack addicts and stuff. And it's real. I mean, that's it. So ICP sort of appeals to rural Americans because it reflects what they see around them, which is just dysfunctional families and like really crippling drug and alcohol abuse and like child molestation and stuff like that. They have a song, and so this kind of gets into the other thing I wanted to talk about regarding them. They have a song called, I think, Chicken Hunting, where they talk about going out and murdering white supremacists. And it's like, that's not, I mean, let's not, like, murder, but it's, they're horror rap. It's their genre. Almost all their songs are about murder. And this is what a lot of rap is about. I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're probably going to get through it. Listen to some Tupi or Big Pac sometime. And, you know, they rap about murder a lot. Snup Dubbity Dog has rapped about murder. Yeah, so it's like, they're not unique to it. They didn't come up with it. They just made it their brand so that they could succeed. And I think I messed this up horribly. They could succeed and not go to jail. So hard to get too mad at them for that. But I have seen people say really. Actually, I see this a lot. People just joke about killing juggalos all the time, like how they're a waste of space, and how like you see it a lot, and people make jokes about them being worthless human beings, and I don't know, man. Kiss, like they wear the paint. They came from an economic era where the same city, Detroit, was better off economically, and that's the big difference. Like, it's ICP didn't come from privilege, and KISS might not have either, but they came from more privilege than I don't remember that one's name, something Bruce. I don't remember their names, but yeah, not graduating the high school, let alone the middle school for one of them, and they did well for themselves. And I don't know, man, commercial music I kind of find gross, but a lot of people don't. A lot of music is explicitly commercial. A lot of music is about explicitly making money, and like most pop music is about either women's bodies or making lots and lots of money. So I mean, that's kind of reality. I wish it wasn't, but it is. As of recording this, there's a song called "Body Like a Back Road" that's just been on the hit charts for 3 billion years, and it's like it sounds. Okay. I also, oh my god, I remember this now. It goes like all the way around. It goes all the way around the eye, and then there's an inner concentric green square or green shape around the eye. I don't think I'm going to get that whole thing, but we're going to try some stuff. It's going to be good. So yeah, like a lot of the issues you could find in their music is reflected in mainstream music, and they have an explicitly anti-racist message, and a lot of rural white people listen to their music. And I think that Insane Clown Posse probably does more positive good in the world than most hip-hop or pop acts because of that. I mean, because they have a very simple, not inarticulate platform of supporting each other and not being horrible to each other, and it could be better in a ton of ways, but like I said, there's really an explicitly anti-racist message, and most of their fans are white, but not all of them, and it's because of what they're writing about. It's like Eminem. It's because of what they're writing about. It's not because they're... Yeah, I mean... So there you go. Different types of music appeal to different people, and I think ICP has been pretty successful because people in the Midwest, or just rural people in general, a small fraction of them responds to it. And yeah, they get a lot of shit for it. And they're not... I mean, they put on the face paint. That's the difference, is they're honest about what they're doing. They're clowns. It's not like they're pretending they're serious artists. They're not Kanye West, like pretending they're a serious artist and not putting on the face paint, but still clowning around, like just straight clowning. And so yeah, it's really hard to, the more you know about them, to like harbor sustained hatred towards them. The more you understand about something generally, the less emotional your responses to it are, and usually the more measured. And that's a great thing. Means less thermonuclear war, hopefully. Some of the other clowns in this image. I'm pretty excited about this shoe. Well, you know that clown. That's Mackie McDougal. For the famous restaurant chain. It is, since he's right next to Odorous, clearly falls under fair use for parody, to prove a point. that he is one of many famous clowns that have clowned, not only to get down, you got a clown to get down, but also full money, professional clowns. And that's why we have Odorous right next to him, who, I mean, you have to maintain this particular shell lie that there's this conspiracy that's going around on the internet that basically a human was inside a suit the whole time, and he's not actually horrible space scum from another galaxy, and that's obviously not true. But, you know, I mean, fake news abounds. And so, yeah, if you subscribe to that reptilian fish lizard lie, then this person is putting on a suit and doing it professionally, looking ridiculous, and making money off of it. And not just that, but a lot of people like their music and how stupid it is. Like, it's just sort of intentionally over the top and crazy and goofy and like kind of dumb. And yeah, I don't know, man. I've never been to California, but other people have, so they can probably explain to you something about music over there. There's a lot of good goofy California music. Wow, this one's not great. This one's not. Okay. Well, we're gonna stop ruining that for now. Then, Bozo. I don't know a ton about Bozo, except that I know that he helped establish some clown archetypes, and that he was a really widely influential clown that sort of started the party clown thing in the United States, from what I understand. Clowning, it sort of has a history. It's based on historical, like peasant characters, like vagrants or beggars. Yeah, so like a lot of these stock characters, it's sort of a hobo stock character. Yeah, and it changed with time, and eventually it got kind of formalized. But clowning comes in all sorts of forms. And party clowns or insane posse clowns are but a couple forms of those. I don't like face paint. Or I might clown around, but I've never really liked face paint, so. Also, the music of Insane Clown Posse is pretty unequivocally terrible. I suppose that's just in my opinion, but I weight my opinion pretty heavily on these things. If you also don't believe me on that, listen to them for yourself. The song "Where's God" that I was talking about before, the Miracles was a big one on the internet a while back, and it is fantastic. Yeah, but it's always worth knowing more about stuff. I think. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. I'd really like to. I'd like to see a well-structured argument for ignorance. Not an argument from ignorance, but an argument like for ignorance. That'd be pretty interesting. I think this is looking all right. Yeah, it's looking all right. So, these brush pens are great. I haven't smudged anything yet, which is almost impossible to believe. We're getting some good outlines on all these clowns. This clown in particular, he's not my favorite clown. I'm gonna be honest. So a lot of these clowns, I'd get down with these clowns. Like Peter Criss seems like he was the reasonable dude in a band of unreasonable jerks, and they kicked him out so that they could always have a voting majority against the other reasonable dude. Yeah, and he's got like weird cat makeup, and that's cool. Bozo, I would have gotten down with Bozo. The man, so this is why you really don't want to use clown as an insult. you just want to identify the behavior when people are clowning, and you don't make a value judgment with that. You're just like, oh, those people are clowning. Those people are clowning around. And so, like, if you have a picture on the internet of people just straight clowning, that are obviously just clowning up to clown down, to clown town, then that's one thing. And so it's not an insult. Clowns are people that expend effort and time to entertain children, and that's something to be applauded. Cool. So that's the thing, is clowns are just like Mr. Rogers that don't have like the raw human talent and superhuman like integrity. That they just can't be next level transdimensional entities. They still want to entertain kids, and they still want to try. And maybe there's a better way to do it, but it doesn't seem like a bad way to make a living entertaining children. But I don't know. Maybe it ain't right. This is all pretty black. It's this main thing he has. Yeah, I could fill that in later. It looks pretty slops, but that'll happen. Get some bits going. Yeah, I'll check that out later. Oh yeah, he's got more. He's got like these guys. Yeah, he's looking pretty good. Strippy stripe. Strippy stripe. Stripe it up. I'm gonna stop for a bit. Change the reel to reel. Feed the trained baboon. I have turning the crank. Yeah, it looks like we're about half done. I'm not going to show the fully rendered one, but I'm going to get some outlines on all these guys and on the building behind it and a race, hopefully, and show you what that looks like and how you can work off of it. Yeah, I'll be right. Bachman Turner Overdrive. So I said before, I take a systemic approach to things, and this isn't the only approach I take to thinking about things, but when you're thinking about huge groups of people, you're thinking about large systems, it seems to make sense to take a systemic approach to thinking about them. And if you're thinking about yourself operating responsibly within a system, which is just to say lots of people existing near each other and communicating with each other on a regular basis and expecting further peaceful communication until they die, basically, just forever. So that society, that civilization is peaceful, cooperative existence, and it doesn't run perfectly, but it's gotten a bit better. At least it's gotten better with time from a lot of perspectives. Worldwide, it's gotten worse from certain perspectives, but yeah, it's changed, and it's changed the way it's changed, and there's not much you can do about it. A lot of historical ways of living are impossible because there's way more people, and we just don't have the space or resources for everybody to live nomadic lives or be pastoralists or whatever. So yeah, I think when you're something in a system and you want to be a responsible political person or whatever, or you just want to be a good person, honesty is super important because first of all, it protects you, and you establish a reputation for honesty, and you are accurately relaying information to other people, other parts of the system, and that is almost always a good thing. Sometimes it's not. Nazi comes to your door, don't give him information, lie to him, there's definitely permissible lies, but I don't think lying to someone about a direct question they asked to you, that doesn't mean violent intent towards other people, just like a person you know asks you a question and you lie to them to make them feel better. I don't really think that's cool. Do you think that's cool? Yeah, and so I think that's super important. And it's the thing I was talking about, like sort of personal politics. I think they're important if you want people to listen to you politically. It was a big part of liberalism, is, education and self-improvement and bettering your understanding of the world. And that's sort of the Thomas Jefferson idea, is that we can eventually have a polity where almost everyone gets to live like an elite back then lived, and have exposure to art and music and architecture and all sorts of great stuff. And in a lot of ways, we have really wonderful exposure to the arts, because of digital reproduction, or just film before that. So yeah, in some ways we're closer there. In other ways, there are really well grandfathered in systems of exploitation that keep classes of people out of decision making positions, and I think that mostly that's on an income base. It's pretty easy to explain, or it's pretty easy to observe or understand, and like you see studies of responsiveness to different income brackets, and yeah, I mean, American politics don't do much for the poor. A lot of times they do stuff to make it worse. I think and there's all sorts of ways. Usually sometimes people are explicitly trying to make it harder for them. Sometimes they're not. Yeah, I mean, that's looking pretty good. Yeah. So I do think that there's sort of such a thing as a working class and workers, but that's sort of eroding. A lot of people are self-employed. It's very different than it was when we had strong unions. And I mean, we have weaker unions because certain unions certain unions got in bed with business and just helped dismantle other unions. Denounced other unions in the Red Scare, and took over shops, or all sorts of stuff. A lot of the surviving unions are pretty complicit with dismantling, unions like the IWW, more radical unions. And since that, we've had not much of a functional left in the United States since the New Deal. But it sort of, a lot of the radical and socialist elements were stamped out before that, and everything was after that, after World War II. So yeah, there's been in many ways a systemic dismantling of institutions on the left, to stop their contribution to the political debate. Yeah, so that's the thing. I might sound like I have opinions that put me in a particular bit, but I don't, like an easy to summarize or pinhole or characterize with a group. But I really consider myself, in that I understand leftist to mean socialist, a person who wants the excess of industry to go towards the vast majority of people and not small minorities, and wants equality of opportunity for everyone in the polity. That's me, and I'm not going to, if someone says that I'm not really a socialist because no true Scotsman takes sugar in their porridge. Well, I don't know, man, because my grandmother takes sugar in her porridge. She's a true Scotsman, and I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a fallacy called no true Scotsman, and it's when you're in a nebulous group that is definable based on very easy, like just saying I believe, like sort of what I just identified socialism as, egalitarianism, and I'm also a Democrat. I think we should have an increased involvement in democracy. I think voting should be mandatory, like it is in Australia and New Zealand. It's really easy to get out of, but most people don't. I think voting day should be a holiday. So I think if you want to do anything, if you want to survive, if you want leftist policies, you have to have a thick skin. I mean, you have to be as perfect a representation of your ideas, or at least people can read into they can read your body language or how you're talking, or from context, if people are interested, they can understand that you're not a monster. But you sort of understand going into making anything public, it's a lot of people's jobs to take things out of context deliberately. And there's nothing you can do about that, although I do have a strategy. I don't think if someone won't come up to me and have a discussion with me about an idea, or try to contact me and have a discussion with me about an idea, and they just maybe take something I say out of context, or whatever, it doesn't really get me that bad, because they're not addressing any of my ideas, and they're just upset by what I'm saying. And that's a sort of a difference I'm seeing. I'm not seeing as much of that on the left as I am on the right. And I think that's problematic, because the guys on the right, they know their ideas are wrong, and they want to win hard. They're getting paid to win hard, and they want to win hard. So they're going to be more disciplined, and they're going to be aware of these aspects. They're going to send out people that are articulate and clean cut. And how many people do you think Ben Shapiro is winning to the right with how he talks, with how articulate he is, and and a lot of his ideas are just very straightforward, based on very straightforward conservative fallacies, or I say straightforward, very common conservative fallacies, and he exists to propagate those ideas. He says so himself. They're not great. They're not the best ideas. A lot of them are provably false. But since he's so articulate about it, he's going to convince a lot of people in decision-making spots. And I think there's a huge gender divide online right now, but I definitely don't think all the people that are going to be affected by him are men. I think that people like him are going to convince plenty of women, because I just don't think most people care as much where that stuff's coming from on both sides. I don't think that everybody disqualifies everybody's information because they're not the right group. So I think that's a danger, having articulate people on one side and mostly inarticulate people on the other side, is not helping things. And I should say, I can be kind of articulate, but I'm not a pundit. I am a dude inking in a picture. I usually do watercolors, that is concerned about the discourse, wants to talk to people. I don't think what I am doing is the same thing as what Cenk Uygur or Ben Shapiro or whatever is doing. I don't think they're directly comparable. I'm giving my views. yeah, I don't know. This seems to be one of the best hopes for democracy, is democratizing the marketplace of ideas, and not just having loud, motivated people, a lot of them just getting money one way or the other, and that's why they're motivated, control the conversation. And I think there's going to be lots of people that, and there already are a lot of people that are sharing less conventional views, that are a lot less establishment, and that kind of discussions probably are only hope for fixing the dialogue before it's too late. I think that crowdfunding is great. Once I get more competent, probably a year or something into making these videos, or less than that, I don't know, I probably will set up a Patreon or something, because it's a very small contribution to ask people if they enjoy your videos. I don't think you should do it right away. You should probably establish that you're willing to do it for a period of time. But if you have super professional videos that are well made, or you're already established, or whatever, whatever. People waste their money on stuff all the time, and they know it. And a lot of people would much rather contribute to the stability of a working artist. Okay, yeah, sorry. Of a working artist, rather than give Mickey D's more money, or whatever, or buy a Call of Duty game. So yeah, I mean, let's say you play video games, those cost $60 a piece. That's like a month of supporting 20 people on Patreon. And I think that's how a lot of people are going to see it, because I generally think that a lot of my attitudes, just like everyone else's attitudes, because I'm part of a social organism, are generational, and a lot of people probably feel the same way as me, because it's very obvious in certain fields. When if you care about board games or video games, a lot of the best ones made recently have been crowdfunded. Yeah, it's a more democratic way. It's better capitalism, because the capital is coming directly from the consumers, and you're not beholden to garbage barons whose jobs are just to make as much money as possible. And you have people who really want to make good games because they want to do it until they die, and so they know their reputation matters and is on stake. And that's sort of part of what I'm talking about, being like in the 21st century, is just like your reputation matters, how you carry yourself matters. Yeah. Finishing up with these trousers. She's also got a puff ball. Boop, boop. Yeah, so no complaints so far from the pen. Some of this stuff, I can't really get close enough with the camera legs where they are. Oh yeah, so privacy on the internet. A lot of people that are newer to the internet and maybe started using it when Facebook, they got a Facebook account, and that's the first time they really extensively used the internet, or earlier. But privacy, I think, is a really big deal, and it's good so that unpopular ideas can, I mean, that's what you need freedom of speech for, is protection of unpopular ideas, because everyone agrees to the popular ones, or the majority does. And so I think anonymity is pretty important. That's why, despite talking about not being super try-hardy about hiding my identity, it's like, everyone works somewhere. I don't want to get, it's not that I think I'd get fired or anything like that. But do you like, if you're self-employed, I suppose that's one thing, but why put your name out there? Because that's not what matters. And if you do put your name out there, it's probably for professional reasons, but like pretty far down the road. But like starting out, who knows if you're going to keep doing it. I don't really think opinions expressed are disqualifying, or that, I mean, anything I post, I've watched in editing, and I pretty much just cut takes together, but I still watch it, and it's like, yep, I knew where I was coming from there. But I do believe in internet anonymity. I like it. I don't think it's only bad. I think that people with horrible, bigoted opinions don't think about things enough to. I mean, they say them on their Facebooks with their real names. They're proud of their opinions. Welcome to America. I mean, that's these people with horrible, abhorrent opinions are more than popular or more than happy to tell you about them. And so I don't think anonymity has been great for online discussion. Comment sections have suffered every time anonymity is attacked, basically. The Google Plus integration killed a lot of comment sections for a long time. And yeah, people will say horrible stuff. Also, people will just still make anonymous accounts with fake names. So if they really want to. Yeah, so we got most of the peeps. Think we're gonna just finish up this building structure. Yeah, the details on that. Maybe do some erasing. Yeah. So, a couple things. One thing you might have noticed is I'm kind of a fan of long format videos. I love them. As long as the people are interesting or they're saying things that I haven't heard before or are challenging, I tend to love them because I like something to listen to in the morning when I'm eating, or if I'm making art, because music's good, but it doesn't always do. A lot of times I like to listen to music more actively than that. And when you're doing art, you often have a lot of time to think about the things that people are saying. So I really like long format videos versus short format videos. That's why these ones are so long. This one will be really long. Yeah. So coolio. And so one thing I think is really going back to the composition, as it were. One thing I think is really clownish is extreme political, violent behavior. People going to protests, armed, to fight each other, and then attacking each other. Yeah, I told you I would smear it. I'll fix that later, but I knew that would happen eventually. You should go left to right. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, so a quote from one of my favorite books. I think it's the First Foundation book by Isaac Asimov. A character says, violence is the last resort of the incompetent. And it's just if you have, your reasoning's going to be bad, if you have to resort to violence, and, this is not the strength of thinking people, is to resort to stupid street violence. And the device the internet historian used to frame one such incident was really, I thought was clever, because he compared it to World of Warcraft, because these kids just aren't taking it seriously at all. And yeah, and then I'm exposed to other people's social media, even though I don't have one myself, and everyone was pumped about the what is it, Spencer, the Red State guy, but the quote-unquote fascist getting punched, and you have to defeat them in non-violent terms, because fascists are going to probably be better at violence than us. And using a political a historical, political. Orwell talks about fascism essentially having no meaning except fascism means bad and democracy means good. Yeah, it's not super descriptive. In a lot of ways, our society is fascist. It has integrated fascist elements. There is a huge amount of collusion directly between government officials, like legal collusion, and business leaders. A lot of our policies are decided by business interests, arguably, to some people, all of our policies. It's that or lizards in the moon. 50-50 on that one. So, yeah, kind of got lost drawing out this fence. That's bound to happen. But basically, fascism, not a great descriptor. Talk about their particular policies, talk about what they're trying to do, and talk about how you're different. But, I mean, yeah, there's a merger of the state and the and corporate interests in particular, but just business interests in general. And I mean, a lot of people would argue, probably with some legitimacy, that the United States was set up by wealthy landowners for their own interests, and they didn't want a direct democracy. They wanted, because they thought the rabble, as they say, would have the masses or the mob. They'd have mob rule, and they set up an alternate system on purpose. I think the system should get more democratic. I think we should amend the Constitution to make it more democratic. But yeah, violence is really serious, and it's just, it makes you look completely unreasonable. And this is what I was worried about at the start a couple years ago. It was the Yale professor having to resign from that role. It's just sort of, they're poisoning good ideas. There are good ideas, but they're presenting them so horribly, people won't even listen to them. And like I said in another video, I'm noticing crossover, like, into, like, people disbelieving science because of the left's association with science and because of anti-scientific claims that certain people on the left make. And yeah, you have to be an avatar of your ideas. You have to present them well. And so I think you have people who sort of just fell into complacency because they knew their ideas are good, and they live in places where other people have their ideas, and so they know they're right. Why should they have to convince anyone else of that? And I think that that's what the internet has encouraged people of all political stripes to do. And where I see the most reasonable people interacting and, like, actually having meaningful dialogues is in long format videos. The Sam Harris podcast is really good. The Joe Rogan podcast is hit or miss, but he does them so much that he gets out some good ones for that. I don't know if I've ever made it through one with a fighter, but the Dorian Yates one was really good. He has Sam Harris on semi-frequently. He has a lot of good ones. Yeah. Down here. And they're not all perfect, and Joe Rogan is not a perfect... Joe Rogan's not an ideologue. I mean, he just doesn't have that position. He's like a curious monkey, and you can watch him learn in real time, and you can watch his logical failings in real time. And that's super instructive, I think. He puts himself out there for other people to see. He's like... I think he's described himself as, like, the smartest stupid guy, or something like that, or the dumbest smart guy. And yeah, I see a lot of guilt by association on the internet. People are automatically wrong because they went on this podcast or they talked to this person, and that's generally comes from people who know that their arguments are poor or that they don't have arguments. because they're not attacking the substance of the arguments these people are making. It is easier to just discredit people than to address their arguments. And I don't actually understand how you can disprove that. When it's as easy as calling somebody a chauvinist or a bigot, and that's all you have to do, and that discredits them to a certain crowd, write an article, and, post it to Salon. Like calling people like Sam Harris bigots, and it's like, have they ever listened to a word he said, or do they just listen to the ones that are quote mined for them? And that's why you really can't be super eaten up about what people on the internet say, because they're either trying to get a reaction out of you, because you get a reaction out of them, or they're just trying to intimidate you out of your reasoning because it's threatening to theirs. And a lot of times they're very unreasonable people, and you don't know who these people are. You really can't take it personal. I think there's all sorts of stuff that people do on the internet, especially to public people, that's really reprehensible, and you should still think about their feelings. In the end of Politics in the English Language, Orwell talks about how you should avoid any of the rules he sets out to, if you would be, I don't know, he says like utterly beastly or something. And so don't, and that's the thing. And it's like, yeah, there's gray lines and people get upset. And the Dillahunty thing from earlier, I understand, and I think it's in a lot of ways a generational thing. And I don't know, man. Are you gonna be a worse person if you focus more? If you take that thought into perspective and you challenge that idea that it adds credibility to be, the guy never called you bald, right? He kept bringing in fat and bald, and it's like, the guy never called you bald. Other people do, but you're associating this reasonable person with dickbags. And I think he got worked up and he didn't treat the other caller fairly. The one I was talking about towards the end of the episode. It's about an hour in. I can probably find the episode number and put it in the description, but I might not. Laziness abounds. Or I'll probably just forget, is more likely. Yeah, so don't be violent to people. You can't have it both ways. You can't go to a protest, be expecting violence, and then like when the police do what they're supposed to do. I mean, that is their job. It's just not, you can't have violence in the streets. And try to defund the police force if you don't think police are necessary. But man, do you really not think police are necessary? Or do you really think all police are murderers or potential murderers? I think of it in this terms. You're sensitive to the perception or you're not. And if you are sensitive to the perception, you're going to try as hard as you can to watch your behavior and change your behavior and treat different people fairly, and especially treat black people fairly, and make sure you're not being biased against them in your policing. Or you're going to be insensitive to that, and sooner or later, because of improvements on policing, body cameras and stuff, like, you will get caught. And yeah, when a cop kills somebody, this is the thing. You can't have every cop that kills somebody in his job. If you think having armed policemen, like, if that's the law, you can't have every cop that's armed potentially go to jail for killing somebody. Anyone could sue. But yeah, there should be an investigation into every shooting. And you should lose your job or go to jail if you shoot somebody with a knife who didn't come towards you and maybe he drops the knife. and he gets shot 15 times. Maybe the cops shouldn't keep their jobs. Cops shouldn't keep their pensions. There could be an argument from police officers that it endangers cops to be so afraid of using their firearms. Yeah, being a cop is a dangerous job, and maybe, yeah, I don't know if I think that I think that you need better live weapons training, live fire training for a lot of cops. A lot of this lies into better training. A lot of this stuff doesn't happen where I live because the police it happens to, really egregious stuff doesn't happen because we have a well-trained police force that are well-funded. I live in a pretty small city, but we have about 3 billion cops. So that's slight hyperbole. Yeah. I keep saying cops, which is short for coppers. But yeah, I understand not being pumped about cops. I don't want to go out of my way to hang out with cops or talk with cops. Yeah, that's the thing, is I don't think because the ones I've interacted with in my own town are pretty decent people, that means that's the case everywhere. I think there's systemic problems in all levels of law enforcement, and black people are disproportionately targeted by them. Poor people, I think, are also disproportionately targeted, and yeah, it's no good. We are criminalizing poverty. Martin Luther King's march before he died was going to be the March on Poverty, or was the March on Poverty, because that is the central cause. It's not, you need equal voting rights, and I think in a lot of ways we need to restore the Civil Rights Act, because parts of that were rendered unconstitutional by the Supreme Court a couple years ago, and that's no good. That's not... You don't want to live in a world, a post-civil, with no Civil Rights Act. But I don't ever hear anyone talking about this. I've actually never heard a professional viewpoint person talking about, bringing up this point, in the last 2 years, I should say. Right when it was happening, it's oh yeah, they're getting rid of the Civil Rights Act. This would be a central thing I was talking about. It's hey everybody, they literally took away our civil rights. Voter suppression is huge. Yeah, we need to make the system more democratic. We need to make the system more fair. A lot of clowns are just trying to entertain people to get a buck. But a lot of times people who aren't clowns start clowning, and they're not professionals. And when you're not professional and you try to clown around, someone could get hurt, and you shouldn't intimidate people with violence. It's not cool. Yeah, Oderus Ungerus takes a break from violence to visit Earth, because he's so hyper-violent everywhere else that he's got to leave one place for last, presumably. I think I'm gonna probably finish this bit off camera, and then erase all of the pencil, and maybe do another video where I finish rendering it. There's some smudgy bits, but it's gonna be fine. Yeah, have a great day.